it's time for a new About Me video. So, my name is Bibel. Some people know me by the Bumbling Biochemist, and as of August 2025, I'm an assistant professor of chemistry and biochemistry at Loyola Marymount University, or LMU, in Los Angeles, California. Here I teach biochemistry to undergraduates, both in the classroom and in the laboratory. Speaking of the laboratory, I was trained in protein and RNA biochemistry and structural biology, and I am a total geek at heart. So geeky that I have an alter ego, the Bumbling Biochemist, who's on a mission to make biochemistry fun and accessible for all. And so I have a blog and a YouTube channel and things like this, and it's really just my effort to try to pay forward the knowledge that I've gathered over all the years, because I'm just really, really grateful. And so I have the privilege. I don't need to monetize it or anything, so I don't. YouTube still throws in ads and stuff, so apologies about that. But here's a little bit about me and my background and some of the content that you can find in my various platforms that hopefully can help you, and hopefully then you'll go and you'll pay it forward and help someone else. So let's dive in. I got my undergraduate degree in biology from St. Mary's College of California. So it's a small liberal arts school in the Bay Area of California. And there I got introduced to research by an excellent professor, Dr. Jeffrey Sigmund, and I have him to thank so much. He really gave me the confidence to do research and showed me that being a scientist was actually an option for me, and gave me my first hands-on experience in the lab. So I had actually started doing research with him in the summer research program. And the reason why I did that was just to have something to put on my med school resume. And I fell in love with research. And Dr. Sigmund encouraged me to go forward with it. And he encouraged me to push myself and actually apply to get a grant to do external research one summer. And so I worked with Dr. Steve Finkbeiner at the Gladstone Institutes and UCSF with a grant from the Huntington's Disease Society of America, and there I really got introduced to the academia and research at a bigger institution. Things like, what are the various people in a lab, who's who, what's a postdoc, so when you do research after you graduate, after you get your PhD, all these various things I got introduced to there. I started thinking maybe I want to do an MD PhD, then I'm like, no, I just want to go full out for this PhD. And so then I went from St. Mary's to Cold Spring Harbor, all the way across the continent to Long Island. And there I joined the Leemor Joshua-Tor lab. And so it's a structural biology lab that focuses on understanding processes regarding small RNAs. And so like RNA interference type things, as well as DNA replication. And so I focused on the RNA interference. And so basically it's this process where you have this protein argonaut, and it binds to these small RNAs, which can be microRNAs, they can be small interfering RNAs, they can be natural, they can be introduced as therapeutic drugs. And those small RNAs then guide the argonaut to go to a corresponding messenger RNA that has the instructions for making a protein you want to stop being made, and then the protein stops getting made. And so I focused on the protein argonaut, and I did a lot of structure functional work in terms of biochemically characterizing it and the role of phosphorylation on getting it to give up that target so it could go and bind another mRNA. And so I did a lot of biochemistry, a lot of protein purification. I also did some structural biology. I did some X-ray crystallography, got introduced to cryo-EM. But really, I was all for that biochemistry, even the really old school biochemistry. So talking scintillation counters to measure radioactivity from kinase assays. So I was always thinking, okay, I want to study what's going on at the molecular level and really get a sense of the molecules. And ultimately, it ended up in this publication. And so I encourage you to check it out if that sounds like something that's interesting to you. If not, then don't. I have a lot of videos on RNA interference, as well as a blog page and stuff on it too. So you can go and get more information there. Then I went and I said, okay, time for the next step. And so as I mentioned before, a postdoc is when you go to a new lab after you do your graduate training, after you get like your PhD. You go to another lab, and this can be just to get more experience while you're waiting for a job. It can be to learn a new technique. It can be anything like that. And so I joined Danica Fujimori's lab at UCSF, and they were a chemical biology lab that was really interested in figuring out how RNA gets modified and how ribosomes are inhibited by antibiotics. I took on a project that was related to the antibiotics and ribosomes aspect, but I took it in a little bit of a new direction. And so the lab had previously done some really cool work into the structural basis for the cool phenomenon that when bacteria are treated with certain antibiotics that target the bacterial ribosomes, the bacterial ribosomes just keep on doing what they're doing until they reach a specific sequence that they're translating, that they're making into protein, and then they get stuck. And they found the structural basis for this that was the nascent peptide. So as the protein is getting made, the peptide is winding its way out of the ribosome. And if a specific sequence is there, then it makes a nice little binding spot for certain antibiotics. And then the antibiotics bind and the ribosome can't do its thing. Mitochondria basically come from a really old ancestor cell swallowing a bacteria. And so the the mitochondria got rid of most of the stuff that the bacteria had, but it kept the ribosomes and then just modified them a bunch. And so the mitochondria actually have their own ribosome, a mitoribosome, and it is structurally similar to the bacterial ribosome at its heart, and that heart is where certain antibiotics target. And so this can actually cause toxicity. We looked at the oxazolidinone linezolid, which is used to treat like tuberculosis and is really important, and chloramphenicol, which actually had such bad toxicity that it's not used in people much. It is used in veterinary medicine, it's used for certain medical applications, and it's used in the lab, and it can actually inhibit mitochondrial ribosomes. And so we want to know whether it happened in the same sequence-specific manner, and so I did ribosome profiling, my ribosome profiling. So basically going in and looking and seeing what sequence the ribosomes were sitting on. And then also working with collaborators. So purifying this mitochondrial ribosome that then my collaborator Tushar was able to get the cryo-EM structure of and help show the binding of this antibiotic to the ribosome. And that can hopefully help design antibiotics that are able to better discriminate between the mitochondrial and the bacterial ribosomes and cause less side effects. And antibiotics are becoming increasingly important. New antibiotics, as the old antibiotics are becoming increasingly less useful as the bacteria are evolving. And so antimicrobial resistance is a huge growing thing. And so hopefully our work can contribute a little to it. I then transitioned to teaching. And so First, I went back to St. Mary's College of California, and I was a visiting professor there from 2023 to 2025, and I taught biochemistry as well as some introductory chemistry labs. Had a really great experience, and then I was off to find a tenure track job, and I ended up at LMU. And so now I'm at LMU, and I teach biochemistry, might teach some general chemistry in the future, and also run the little lab. And so I started my lab at St. Mary's and I'm continuing it here at LMU. Basically, we investigate the metabolic adaptations of metal-remediating microbes. And so what do I mean by this? Basically, bioremediation, this is when you use organisms such as bacteria to clean up environmental messes. And the mess that we're really interested in is heavy metal contamination. And so by things like chromium-6, which can cause a bunch of toxic things. So I don't know if you've heard the Aaron Brockovich story in the movie and things like that. That was chromium-6 contamination was causing all these problems. And there aren't really good solutions for cleaning it up, but one of the good solutions is using bacteria that are actually able to convert that chromium-6 to chromium-3, thereby kind of like detoxing it. And one of these bacteria is Bacillus cephensis. And it's related to Bacillus subtilis, so there's a lot of stuff known about subtilis, which is great, and there's a lot of resources for it. So we're kind of comparing the two, and we're comparing really their metabolism, and not just their metabolism, but we're interested in this protein at the heart of metabolism, malic dehydrogenase. But it's known for its role in the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is the central hub of metabolism, even in bacteria. And malic dehydrogenase is a critical kind of branch point. And so it is thought that this protein is involved with the bacteria being able to metabolically adapt in order to carry out the bioremediation. And so
My background is in protein and RNA biochemistry, and so as a protein biochemist, this protein has a lot of really interesting things about it. And so it's in a class of malodehydrogenase proteins that aren't as well studied. And so we're going to study it. And so we do recombinant protein expression and purification. Basically, we get other bacteria to make the protein for us, we purify it, then we enzymatically characterize it and do things like this. We also look in vivo and we use techniques like mass spectrometry, so like GCMS, HPLC, various things to see what's going on inside of the bacteria in the process of metal bioremediation. How is their metabolism changing? We can do things like measure the activity of malodehydrogenase, and we're hoping to, in the future, work on genetically engineering these bacteria so that we can see what happens when we take our in vitro findings about what we think various amino acid residues say are doing, and then see what happens in vivo. Okay, so that's kind of like the more professional things. Now let's get to the bumbling biochemist. And so it really all started in that summer after I graduated from St. Mary's College of California, and I was really excited about my work. And I was trying to explain it to my parents, and their eyes were glassing over, and I'm like, why don't they see how exciting this is? It's so cool. Why don't they understand? And I realized that it was just because I was kind of speaking a different language to them. And it wasn't that they couldn't understand the concepts even. It was just that they didn't have the background, they didn't have the vocabulary to know what I was doing. And even if they did, like they couldn't see the connection between why that mattered and why that was cool. And so I started making a series of Instagram posts, and I initially had it just like private to my family, and I just shared pictures of myself in the lab, and I gave myself this alter ego, the bumbling biochemist, on a mission to make biochemistry fun and accessible for all. And I put on a lab coat cape, and I was off. And from that humble beginnings, it blossomed. And so one day I opened my Instagram and I had a ton of followers after I made it public because people, my family and friends were finding it helpful. So I made it public. And then all of a sudden I had all these followers and I'm like, oh my God, did a bot infect my account? But no, it was really just that people found the things helpful. And what's really great too is that I have the privilege of not having to monetize any of it. And so I just do it as a way to pay it forward. And it really, I don't try to get followers. I don't do anything like that. It's really just that people have found it helpful. And that just makes me so happy that to know that I'm helping people, especially because part of it was started in a selfish way. Not only did I want to help my family and friends, but I also wanted to help myself. Because as I realized that I was trying to explain things to them, I realized that I needed to really understand things well myself. And so as I looked more into the different techniques I was using, as I looked more into the background of the various things I was doing and the concepts, I started collecting all this knowledge and I started writing it down for myself in part. And so I and ended up collecting all of this into a blog. Then that blossomed into a YouTube channel when people wanted me to explain things that way. And this was all really great training for my teaching career as well. And so my philosophy, basically, I like to explain things in regular everyday language that people can understand, while also giving them the knowledge of what the scientific term is. So I don't just use common language, I also introduce the scientific terms and then tell you basically translate that into more common language so that you can understand these concepts, hopefully, even if you don't understand the terminology or you don't know the terminology. And I go into the details. I don't want to shy away from the details. And so one of the things I was always finding was that if you wanted things in terms that you could understand, it was all really watered down and it was oversimplified. And I wanted to know the details, but I wanted to know the details in a way that I could understand, not the details in the way that is just so full of jargon and expects you to have all this knowledge going in. And so those scientific textbooks, those really hefty tomes, those super dense scientific articles that expect you to come in with a lot of knowledge, that then if you don't have that knowledge, you can't understand the concepts. And I wanted to understand the concepts, but I didn't know all the words and things like that. So I started making these. I made a glossary for my site even, and when you're on the site and you're reading an article, if you hover over one of the terms, it'll pop up a definition. I made a lot of different posts. So the main is like the 365 days of science, and I have a link with a page where you can go and you can search by topic, and you can also search the website. I have a page of practical advice on various things. This is one of the pages where I most frequently direct people to things about practical advice on various aspects of the training of a scientist, as well as I also have a page with more specific career advice for people who want to go the scientific pathway. Techniques, techniques, techniques. So in addition to a whole techniques page, I have a page specifically for protein expression and purification because that's a big part of what I do and what I know. So that's basically it. My philosophy, first and foremost, treat science education as the great privilege that it is. Push electrons, not people. That's the Bumbling Biochemist motto. Think like a molecule. I like to try to think like a molecule. I know that some people don't like anthropomorphization, but I feel like that's my perspective of the world. So if I can try to put myself in the perspective of being a molecule, well, then I can help myself understand things. I always focus on the why, not just the what or the how, and keep the big and tiny pictures in mind. Don't confuse a lack of knowledge of terms with a lack of ability to understand concepts. This is really critical to me. I know that science jargon can be like a foreign language, and people may just need a translator. So, my goal is to really be that translator, pay it forward. I have the privilege of being an undergraduate professor where I can pass on these skills to the next generation. I try to teach them in a way that discourages memorization, like just rote memorization, and instead encourages critical thinking and develops that intuition. And provide them with skills and knowledge that they can take with them and use independently, and they too can pay it forward. I know that I can only reach a set number of students in my own classrooms, so I also want to offer these resources to the broader world because not everyone is so fortunate to be able to afford an education. And one of the great things about the blooming of technology is that it really can make education more accessible to people. And I want to provide those resources, that instruction that some people might not be as fortunate to have in person. So that's me. That's the bumbling biochemist, and that's what's to expect from me. So that's me. That's the bumbling biochemist. Always bumbling, always grateful, always learning, and always trying to do my best to make a positive impact in this world using the training that I have learned and my specific area of focus. I can't make the world a totally better place, but I can do a small part. And so I hope that my content will help you.